Britain's green energy revolution was built on a foundation of lies. Before this company collapsed, it deleted something, and what they erased tells you everything about why thousands of EV drivers were left stranded on motorways in the dark. The UK government told you the electric vehicle revolution was unstoppable. They pointed to charging networks sprouting across motorways, car parks, and high streets as proof. What they never told you was who was actually running those networks and how rotten the foundation truly was. Pod Point, Osprey, Genie Point, Instavolt. These names became synonymous with Britain's EV ambitions, but lurking behind the glossy branding was a network of companies burning through public money at a rate that should have set off every alarm in Whitehall. It didn't. Let's go back to the beginning. The UK's push for EV infrastructure began in earnest around 2011 with the Office for Low-Emission Vehicles pouring millions into grants. By 2020, the government had pledged over £1.3 billion to accelerate the transition. Entrepreneurs smelled opportunity, and they came running. Among those running was Engenie, a British EV charging startup that promised rapid, reliable, publicly accessible charging across the UK. They raised millions. They signed deals with landlords, supermarkets, retail parks. They had a vision. They had backing. What they apparently didn't have was a viable business model. By 2022, the UK had over 35,000 public charge points. The government celebrated. The press ran feel-good headlines. Elon Musk's shadow loomed large, and every British startup wanted to be the country's answer to Tesla's supercharger network. The race was on. The hype was deafening. But underneath the noise, the unit economics were disastrous. Here is the number nobody was saying out loud. The average public EV charger in the UK had a utilization rate of just 10 to 15%. That means for every hour of every day, these machines sat idle 85% of the time. You can't build a profitable business on those numbers. You can only build an illusion of one. And then came the decisions that sealed the fate of the weakest players. Companies began overbidding for site leases, locking themselves into brutally expensive long-term contracts with supermarkets and motorway operators. The logic was growth at all costs. The result was a ticking time bomb of fixed costs with no guaranteed revenue. The energy crisis of 2022 was the knife in the chest. Electricity wholesale prices quadrupled. Suddenly, every kilowatt hour these companies sold was barely profitable or actively losing money. Engenie's operating costs exploded. Their revenue didn't. In December 2022, they filed for administration, quietly, with almost no press coverage. But Engenie wasn't alone. Clenergy EV, EB Charging, multiple regional operators, all gone within months of each other. The collapses formed a pattern so consistent it looked less like bad luck and more like a systemic structural failure that the entire industry and the government had been papering over for years. Now let's talk about the real victims, because while executives collected salaries and VCs quietly wrote off their losses, it was ordinary EV drivers who paid the price. Imagine planning a 200-mile journey. You stop at a charge point that's listed as operational. It's dead. The next one is 40 miles away. Also dead. This was not rare. This was Tuesday. A 2023 Which investigation found that 1 in 3 public charge points in the UK had at least one fault reported in the preceding month. 1 in 3. And the reliability of rapid chargers, the ones drivers rely on for long journeys, was even worse. The government-mandated 99% uptime target, almost no network was meeting it. And then there's the money trail. Millions in government grants flowed into these companies with almost no accountability mechanism. The LEVI, Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund alone, committed £381 million. Grant recipients weren't required to prove long-term viability before receiving public money. They just needed the right pitch deck. Here is what the collapsed companies had in common. They all raised money based on government subsidy assumptions that were never guaranteed. They all built cost structures premised on EV adoption curves that didn't materialize fast enough. And they all had one more thing in common. They kept these projections hidden from the public and from their own customers. But here is the revelation that changes everything. Before Engenie collapsed, the company's internal maintenance logs, obtained through administration proceedings, showed that over 40% of their charge points had known faults for longer than 30 days. They knew their network was broken. They kept taking subscription fees and selling charging sessions anyway. And the regulator, Ofgem, and the Department for Transport had the power to audit these networks. They had the frameworks. What they lacked was the will. No enforcement action was taken against any collapsed EV charging operator for consumer harm. Not one. The drivers who paid for a service that didn't exist received no compensation, no apology, nothing. The UK government has set a target that every new car sold from 2035 must be electric. That is 11 years away. Right now, for every 100 kilometers of British motorway, there are fewer rapid charge points than you would find in a single Tesla supercharger station. The foundation is crumbling, and they want to build a skyscraper on top of it. The dirty secret of the UK EV charging collapse isn't incompetence, it isn't bad luck. It is that the entire ecosystem was designed to attract investment and government money, not to serve drivers. The companies that failed weren't building infrastructure. They were building a story. And when the story stopped selling, they walked away. The charge points stayed, broken, in the dark. So here is the question you need to sit with. If the companies entrusted with building Britain's electric future couldn't survive long enough to charge a single car profitably, what does that tell you about everything you've been promised about the green transition? Subscribe if you want the truth that the press releases are designed to hide. And watch next, because the EV battery recycling scandal makes this look like a footnote.